Chapter 2. The Home Front, Monday, 5:40 p.m. Alex Douglas frowned at the darkened computer. He toggled the joystick, stabbed at the keyboard, hit the red firing button. Nothing. Dead. Then he saw her in the reflection on the screen, like a white-robed ghost. Arms folded. "Mom!" he groaned, gritting his teeth. Alex's mother loomed over him in her white nurse's uniform. She had just come off a 12-hour shift at Mercy Hospital in Jersey City and was in no mood for guff. She narrowed her eyes and pointed at him with the flopping end of the top of 5 computer plug she'd just yanked out of the wall, totally crashing his Screaming Eagles 4 flight sim game in the middle of what would have been his most heroic victory ever. He was about to save the world, but he hadn't even had time to hit save. "God, Mom, how can you be so stupid?" He didn't really say that out loud, but he thought it so loudly he was afraid she might hear it echoing in his brain. If he had said it out loud, he probably wouldn't have lived to see his 11th birthday. Only 7 hours and 51 minutes away, he calculated. Alex had discovered over the years that he wasn't so great at hiding his thoughts from his parents. Lately, he'd been practicing in front of the mirror, thinking of stuff that made him mad while trying to keep his feelings from showing on his face. He was pretty sure he was getting better at it. "Don't give me that look," said his mom. "I know what you're thinking." Guess there's still room for improvement, he thought. "What are the rules?" she asked. Alex spotted movement out of the corner of his eye. "Rule 1, Nunu has to stay on her side of the flight line." Alex pointed at his 6-year-old sister, who was top of page 6, about to cross a black and yellow stripe that Alex had taped on the floor, dividing the room in two. Nunu, her real name was Nola Beth, but everyone called her Nunu, sighed and flopped back into her bed. Everything on her side of the room was pink. Pink bed, pink princess sheets, pink dolls piled up on pink pillows. Even the walls on her side were painted the color of shiny chewed bubblegum. Alex had one word for it: gross. The other side of the room, Alex's side, was made of awesome. He had turned it into a shrine to the two things he loved: airplanes and dogs. 4 airplane models dangled from the ceiling on strings: a huge Boeing 747, a World War II-era P-51 Mustang, its nose painted to look like a shark's mouth, a Sopwith Camel biplane, and an F-16 Fighting Falcon, exactly like the one he was flying before his mother pulled the plug on his computer. He'd even stenciled his own call sign, A-Dog, into the nose of the fighter jet. Posters of airplanes covered the walls. Over his bed, tacked to the ceiling, was a huge foldout of a 747 cockpit. Staring up at it night after night before bed, he'd memorized the location and function of every single dial and switch. On his dresser sat a framed photograph of the Navy's Blue Angels Elite Flying Squadron in close, top of 7, formation, signed by every pilot on the team. He got that for his birthday 2 years ago when his dad took him to an air show in upstate New York. They'd gotten up super early, way before dawn, and even though he was dog-tired because he'd hardly slept the night before, he was wide awake by the time they pulled into the airbase and parked in a field near the viewing stand. It was so early, the bleachers were still wet with dew. Not that it mattered, because he never once sat down. He remembered every detail and maneuver like it had happened yesterday. Even his dad seemed impressed. Alex's dad drove a commuter train for a living, which meant he was in charge of steering 500,000 pounds of steel and aluminum through a tunnel underneath the Hudson River at 70 miles per hour. So it took a lot to impress him. In the air show finale, the Angels flew low and fast right over the crowd, 4 fighter jets in a tight diamond pattern, so close overhead that Alex felt like he could reach out and touch their wings. He could still remember how the roar of the engines made his insides rumble. Right after the Angels flew past, Alex's dad reached down and squeezed his shoulder. Alex looked up, his fingers still in his ears to dull the roar of the jets. His dad grinned at him and mouthed one word. Top of page 8. Wow. He had always thought of that day as his greatest birthday ever, until this one. This one was going to leave that years in the... Alex, answer the question. Alex froze. He had totally forgotten what they were talking about. I asked you about the rules, she reminded him. You didn't say which rules. Careful, young man. Ugh. He hated when she called him young man. The fact that it had the word man in it didn't really help because the only word that mattered was young. Man was like those silent letters they just learned about in English class, like the S in island or the G in phlegm. He thought of it as a new part of speech, the silent man. His mom and dad were always telling him he needed to grow up, as one of the things he definitely agreed with them about. Because if growing up meant getting better at hiding your feelings so you wouldn't get in trouble, he was all for it. He wondered if he'd be better at it once he turned 11. All he knew for sure was that growing up meant he could get a dog. Top of page 9. And that's why this was going to be his official new greatest birthday ever. He'd been asking for a dog since forever. Last year, his parents said they'd think about getting him a dog when he was old enough to take care of one. That was all the encouragement he needed. 6 months ago, he'd started his campaign, dropping hints, a steady stream of little reminders that built into a tidal wave. Post-its with the number of days to his birthday would mysteriously appear on his parents' bathroom door. Pictures of dogs would turn up inside their favorite magazines or stuck to the refrigerator door. At 2 months out, he turned it up another notch, beginning almost every sentence with, "When I get a dog." If you get a dog, his parents would correct him. But he was relentless, and before long they stopped saying if and would just trade exasperated looks. That's how he knew it was finally happening. He'd worn them down. He was definitely getting a dog for his birthday, which explained the other half of Alex's half of the room. The other half of Alex's half of the room was plastered with pictures of dogs. Everywhere there wasn't an airplane, there was a dog. To Alex, airplanes and dogs went together like peanut butter and bologna, which happened to be his favorite sandwich. Top of page 10. When he wasn't playing flight sim, or memorizing cockpit dials, or throwing dirty socks at Nunu to keep her on her side of the flight line, he'd stare at all the pictures and daydream about how cool it would be if a dog could just fly a plane. Alex Douglas, pay attention. First and last name. He was in the danger zone now. What are the rules? And this time, I expect a straight answer. Alex sighed. No games until my homework is done. And my chores. Are they done? Define done. Dead silence. Alex withered slightly, then rebounded. He could usually get out of a tough spot by making his mother laugh. How do you know that time travel isn't possible? And I didn't just time warp 2 hours into the past, do my chores, and then time warp right back into my chair. Call it maternal instinct. But he thought he saw her crack a tiny smile. Across the room, Nunu giggled. Despite the dirty socks, she always laughed at her brother's dumb jokes. Top of page 11. If it weren't for Nunu's lolly doll, Alex might have been willing to overlook her other flaws, like her pink sheets or her very existence on this planet, especially the part of the planet that included the other half of his bedroom. But she never went anywhere without Lolly. And by the time you counted the bus ride to school every day, the bus ride home, and anywhere they went with their parents, Alex felt like he never went anywhere without Nunu, which meant that he never went anywhere without Lolly, and her missing eye, and that one ear Nunu had chewed on until it was practically gone, worn down to a hard, spit, dark, threadbare nub. Lolly had ruined his life. It happened the first week of school. Nunu was halfway onto the bus when she whirled around and pointed. She'd left Lolly on the bench. Alex sighed, but sprinted back off the bus and snatched up the soggy-eared doll, just as Jordan McCreevy sauntered up. Jordan the jerk. That's what Alex and his friends called him behind his back. If they'd ever called him that to his face, they probably wouldn't have faces anymore. Jordan snatched the pink doll out of Alex's hand. Alex made a half-hearted attempt to take it back, but Jordan held it way up high, out of reach, as he stared down at Alex. The left side of his, top of page 12, the left side of his mouth began to curl. So I'll stop there. We'll start back at top of page 12.